How often do you think about the Oscars? About how many Oscar-winning films there are and how many you've seen? Yeah, there's a few famous Oscar-winning films that we've all seen. The Godfather and Lord of the Rings and Titanic. I'm King of the World, all that stuff. But the Oscars have been running since 1927. There are currently over 1,000 films, feature-length films, which have won an Oscar. How many have you seen? I did the numbers for myself. It's not many, and I consider myself quite a movie buff. So here then is the premise of this podcast. Every episode, I and a rotating cast of 2 guests will randomly select one of the 1,000 films that have won an Oscar, watch it, and talk about it, with the only requirement being that one of the 3 people on each episode has to have never seen the movie before we talk about it. That will get difficult with Star Wars. Please note that our coverage of a movie does not constitute an endorsement of it. My least favorite movie of 2016, David Ayer's Suicide Squad, won an Oscar for Best Makeup, while my favorite movie of 2016, The Handmaiden, wasn't even nominated for anything. Please also note that our coverage of a movie is not a blanket endorsement of any or all of the people involved in it. A lot of terrible people have won Oscars. Kevin Spacey won an Oscar 20 years before he was outed as an abuser, and Roman Polanski won one 20 years after. But every film, good, bad, or in many cases mediocre, that has won an Oscar is an important part of film history just for being there. And they all, on some level, deserve a tiny bit of consideration, even if that consideration ends up concluding that it's garbage. And with all of that in mind, I am your host, as always, Ellie McConaughey, and with me is Darren Lundberg.
Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead.
And Andrew Wickliffe.
Damn the yeah, no. Perfect. Wow. Unbelievable. I'm like sitting and looking at the Wikipedia page. Nope, that was the wrong place to look for inspiration.
And in case you don't know, I don't know why you would, from that, we are here today to talk about The More the Merrier, the 1943 romantic comedy that won Best Supporting Actor at the 16th Academy Awards. And honestly, I kind of, as long as we're talking about that particular quote, I kind of admire Jingle for like seeing that quote on a statue one time to be like, you know what? New life motto.
That's right. Well, y'all get your inspiration from somewhere, I guess. So yeah.
Did I that made me realize that I know nothing about that particular like military incident that line is from.
Yeah.
Admiral Farragut or whatever, something. It's definitely something.
I tried to, actually, we'll get to it, but I did some research, but did not complete it, and that would not have been included, so.
I very rarely ever do research of these episodes. I watch the movie, maybe I read a little bit about it.
It's not research into the movie, exactly, so.
So like, how would, this is one of those movies where like, the hazard of doing only Oscar-nominated films and doing them basically randomly is you end up sort of like with some movies that you just never fucking heard of in your life. And either of you heard of this movie before?
Oh, yeah. I saw this for the first time. So either I heard about this in a book called Washington Goes to War, which I read in the late 90s, and then would have seen this, or I saw this and then also saw it mentioned, but it would have been around the same period.
Okay.
And then it actually got a fairly early DVD release, I feel like. Back when, because Sony really tried to get out a lot of sort of the classic product. And so, I mean, I don't watch it regularly, but I've seen it, every 10 years since the first time I saw it. And then when I first saw it, I would have shown it to at least 2 to 3 people, though my wife says she has no memory of ever watching it before.
Interesting.
Okay, that's interesting. It being an early DVD release, I was, if not exactly like already a film connoisseur, then at least like cognizant of film as a medium when the shift over from VHS to DVD started happening. And this, without wishing to be too rude, I didn't dislike this film, but without wishing to be too rude, this does seem like kind of a movie they'd move over onto DVD pretty early when they were still like testing out the format a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's not exactly a Goes to War is an interesting place to have seen it because, like, yeah, that tracks. It's a very much a movie, or not Washington Goes to War. It's very much a movie about the city of Washington D.C. under wartime.
Yeah, it's very specific time and place.
I like movies like this where because it caused me to do research on like the housing stuff. Like it's something that at a time of the wartime, it's a time of history that I wasn't prepared, like aware of, and so I like opening my mind to other like instances in history of things that I hadn't. So I like that it's that they said it during this time because it makes it feel unique. That was the first thing that because me, I know Gene Arthur. I'm a big Joel McCrea fan, and so I've always seen this title in their filmographies. And so this is my first time watching it. But it was, as with everything, I'm really, maybe we'll talk about like the way film knowledge is today. A lot of the kids don't want to open themselves up to classics, which I don't understand. And so
Yeah,
I'm
Yeah,
more interested in that now. And so just being able to experience a new movie is something that I long for. And yeah, this is nothing new, but like I said, having it placed in this era, I thought, oh, that's an interesting, instead of it just being like a Three's Company type comedy or whatever, they actually place it at a time where this would make sense. I don't know if that makes
yeah,
sense.
that makes perfect sense.
this is actually, and I've still never seen it, even though I don't have time, so I'm basically only watching things that run between 60 and 70 minutes. And Gene Arthur and Joel McCrea did Adventure in Manhattan at Columbia back in 1936. Sadly, it is 73 minutes, so I have not gotten to it. But yeah, I've always wanted to see that one too because this was a team up of the two of them, and it was McCrea. Sort of seems like he went into like everybody else except Cary Grant just became a Western actor starting in the 50s. And so you lost all of their sort of. I mean, you lost the screwball comedy, but you also lost the urban setting for a lot of those guys. Like, when's the last time Gary Cooper played, or Gregory Peck
Yeah.
seemed like he went between the two of them. So, but most, like Joel McCrea, this was, I'm trying to think. So, he'd been around since the early 30s. But I mean, like, he had standouts by the mid 30s. But, like, just in terms of last Joel McCrea comedy, I feel like this has got to be one of them.
Yeah.
It's interesting to like you said that like people, not just like kids, but like I find that like people, film watchers in general, are kind of like about older films these days, which is kind of a shame because we never had easier access to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's an argument that that's why, because it like it devalues them. Anyway, we're not going into the ethics of media consumption in the nightmare year of 2026.
It's only January and it's already a night.
I mean, it's technically February 1st. And
We
it's
did finally make it to February. January was about 6 months in either direction.
Yeah. We made it.
We made it. We made it.
Oh, good.
The point I was going to make is like part of the reason why I wanted to do this because it is a really good way to like to dredge up movies that maybe I wouldn't ever think to go seek out on their own and to see
Yeah.
them. I will be talking up the fact that I got to see Marjo, which is now one of my favorite documentaries of all time, off this podcast for the rest of my life.
And I have no idea what it is, so I was like, "Oh, that's on my watch list now." So that's great.
It's about a Pentecostal preacher who is quitting in the 70s, to be clear, who is quitting the circuit. And as part of that, he's inviting a film crew to go with him to like show them how the grift works. It's very interesting.
Okay.
But like I look over this year, and with one exception that I think that most people think of, the whole point is to like fill out, see all these movies that won Oscars, and except for one movie this year, up until I'd seen this one, I hadn't seen any of the winners. I had seen one which got a bunch of nominations, which is Ernst Lubitsch's Heaven Can Wait, which didn't win anything because the Oscars make bad choices. We all know that. But obviously, I'd seen Casablanca,
Yeah. Ooh.
which is this year, which means that nothing else, like all the rest of these movies, I don't know anything about.
Yeah.
What is Hello Frisco Hello? What is that? I don't know.
Oh wow. Okay.
Do you know what you're about to like?
I have no idea what that is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe that's
no.
one we can cover later.
Yeah, I'll roll it up someday, hypothetically, 1,000 years from now. And I guess my point, therefore, is that a lot of this is like you go back and you find movies like this, and this is not a very. It's not a movie with a lot of ambition. If that's
right.
if that sounds mean, I feel mean saying.
Yeah, I get it.
But I don't mean it in a cruel way. It's just like it wants to be a pretty decent little rom-com.
Right. I don't know if it was again, you say the Oscars make a lot of, and I say this all the time. Like I don't really take a lot of stock in Oscars. I do think that him winning the best supporting actor for this, I thought that was yeah, he was good enough. He Coburn stood out. But I agree with you. I miss the days though, because these were huge. Like you have Gene Arthur, Joel McCrea in a movie, and so audiences are going to rush out and watch this. And I miss there's hardly any of that today. Where even like a movie with Batista and Momoa in it is an Amazon release. Like what I would pay to see this in a theater. Why is this just playing on streaming, right? So I get that. I just think that this is like the effervescent, this is what you went to movies for, just to see these stars kind of bounce off each other, right? And you're right, it doesn't really do anything ambitious. I just think that maybe it's because it hit on that housing era issue that's what got it. I'm not sure if that's what got it attention, but I think as a romantic comedy, I think it's very solid. I don't think it takes any wrong turns, if that makes any sense. And I enjoyed myself immensely watching. And I miss, like I said, just being able to watch like an old movie like this and see, the chemistry between the stars. That's what's really selling this. That's why you go to see these movies.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think, and I'll preface this with, this is entirely supposition, but I think that this not something that would be like a swing for the Oscars, but I would say that the thing that sort of stands out about the More the Merrier is how, frankly horny it is.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
there's not. So one of the famous examples of forgotten movies, I don't think it won an Oscar, so you've sort of escaped it, but what is it called? Voice of the Turtle, also known as, God, what is it? Voice of the Turtle, 47, One for the Book when it was aired on TV. This was a 1947 rom-com with Ronald Reagan, Eleanor Parker, Eve Arden, and Wayne Morris, based on like an incredibly popular stage production, 1943 stage production, Voice of the Turtle. It was the stage production was entirely about premarital sex.
Whoa.
That is dropped entirely from the movie, and so the movie makes very little sense. Whereas with the More the Merrier, yes, we're using getting married as a euphemism for sex to some degree, but like you don't have. I don't think Casablanca is as brazen as discussing.
Yeah.
Lusty night thoughts.
It's absolutely there, yeah, but it's not. You're right.
It's interesting because like the previous movie I covered is that episode isn't out until a couple days after we record this, but it was the 1935 adaptation of A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Ooh,
with Cagney in it? Is that the one?
Yeah.
Ooh, okay.
And one of the problems I and the other guests sort of took with it is that they needed to cut a lot of stuff because Midsummer. You heard it here last. A lot of Midsummer Night's Dream is about sex.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of what they had to cut about from it in order to meet the Hays Code, or we assume to meet the Hays Code, was a lot of what I think gives Midsummer its like sauce.
Yeah.
Right.
what makes it last. And so, like, jumping from that to this, to a movie that is still under the Hays Code,
Yeah.
whose final plot beat is, well, if I get them married and then leave them locked in a room together, they're just gonna fuck. Like, they just can't help themselves. Is so interesting. And that's not like subtext, that is literally the dude's plan.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that they are like keep pretending they don't want to be married. They're just gonna do it.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. Again, I don't know if people are, like I said, it's fascinating reading about the housing thing. I think because of what was it, the war between 40 and 45, like they hired a bunch of government people, so people moved to Washington D.C.
Mm-hmm.
and I think like the 10,000 newcomers moved into the city every month, and so they didn't have the housing for this, and then they didn't have like all the war effort had put a halt to construction because they needed the supplies and things like that. So you had people like that were living in the street. You had people that again sharing apartments like that, and I don't know, and like running out of, how would it be to like not have running toilet water or running water or stuff like, and then you have to share bathrooms and all that stuff really ties in. But what I think is interesting, and again, it being under the Hays Code, I was fascinated by how are they getting away with this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe it's because it did tap into what was happening at the time, because that is what you had, people that were living together because they had no choice.
Mm-hmm.
You had people that were sleeping in beds in shifts, and you had people, and they were co-ed apartments, not just like they set it up in the beginning here, and you watch for a 43 movie and you're kind of shocked, like, oh, he's trying to move into a female. I get why she doesn't want him to move in, but they have no choice because they need to fill up space. And I was just wondering what the two of you thought. Is that because it taps into what was already happening, that nobody really had a problem with it?
I think the Hays Code, and I feel just like in sort of the public, not even public, but in sort of the film commentary context community, real discussion of the Hays Code hasn't started until the last 15, 20 years with the internet, and with just, the combination of whether it's bloggers, whether it's like media sites writing about it. But I think the Hays Code must have fluctuated a lot more than we think about it fluctuating, because you can see, like, by the late 40s, before the studio system collapsed, they were sort of on the brink. There was a bunch of stuff that felt like it was on the brink. But also, yeah, I think that it's 1943. We are trying to put out a movie that, and the wartime comedies, not a lot of that. Like, when you think about World War II movies, even taking into account that the youth don't take advantage of the fact that they can watch, what's a good example of just, they can watch Magnificent Ambersons right now, right? Like, they don't have to find the right video store. They don't have to do this. They can watch,
right,
Ghost of Frankenstein if they can do a Frankenstein marathon without having to worry about going to the different Blockbuster, right? Like, but the attention that we're able to put on, and this is what I always assumed would happen, but we live in, the bad place. I always assumed that we would see movies like flare up in popularity, like at the early days of Netflix or whatever, when something would get really popular for a second. I sort of assumed that because I was in a self-selecting audience of, classic movie social media where there were young people, but now when I think back on it, there was one. I mean, there were more, but some of them are, in school for, they went to film school. They work in production now. So, like, they were the film nerds, but there was, like, a normie who got into it. But it did not spiral into, the More the Merrier getting rediscovered, or The Devil and Miss Jones, which was Jean Arthur at Columbia in 41, which is fantastic and completely dropped off the map, presumably once the not remake hit the video stores in the 80s, right? Like, so it's just a fascinating sort of thing, but I think the war would have had people more accepting of
Yeah.
less sort of control, I guess. But when's the most obvious Hays Code time? After Ellie pipes in.
I think that like the premise that the Hays Code fluctuates is probably it's true in that the Hays Code is enforced by people and people fluctuate. There's that story that like that people tell about Psycho, which might be apocryphal, but I don't. It proves the point well. So if it's apocryphal, I'm fine with it. Which is that he Alfred Hitchcock submits Psycho, and half the people on the committee see nudity in the shower scene, and so he just submits it again, saying he's recut it, and everyone flips whether or not they've seen nudity.
Yeah.
It is enforced by people, and I have to imagine that, like, yeah, the fact that it's kind of a patriotic movie and that it's like it's walking a line. I would argue that if you were probably going to by the most literal interpretation of the Hays Code, it's probably tripping over it. But like, it's 43. It's fine. Shit's kind of fucked. We're shit in 43 was fucked. Everyone was having a bad time.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I thought of Notorious. Speaking of Hitchcock, and this may be 46 because it was 2 years after the war officially, you quote unquote ended, right? But you have that famous scene between Bergman and Grant where Hitchcock, you couldn't kiss for a long time, so he made a kissing scene with them talking in between kissing, and by breaking it up, it didn't, like, the Hays Code didn't have a problem with it. And I thought it was fascinating. You have a scene in here that's almost just like that. It's when Connie and Joe are walking back from their date, and they are all over each other.
Mm-hmm.
But their dialogue, what I thought was hilarious and brilliant about that scene was the dialogue does not lend itself to them being they're basically telling each other about their past loves and opening themselves up to each other, but they are all over each other, and it almost kissing, rubbing each other, holding each other, that kind of thing on the door. She literally falls into his lap. I thought that it felt progressive, especially because 3 years after this, that's when Notorious came out and they had to work their way around that rule.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that this kind of was a precursor to that. I thought that was fascinating. And like, you're right, it's like a really horny movie. And it's really sensual. It was like for 43, it's like, yeah, they are all over it. And Arthur and McRae, I think they were friends, I think Arthur was notoriously shy. And so she wanted him to be in this movie so she wouldn't have to, be with a new leading man or something like that or anything. Or George Stevens, she was really comfortable with all that. But, I just think that maybe it's because you're right. It's just because of this time they're able to get away with a lot more than they were. You know what I mean? Like 3 years from now, it's the problem comes up again. And in this one, they're really brazen about the way they're having men and women live together, falling in love, stuff like that. And it's just, I don't know. I'm spitballing and going in circles here.
As for like stuff like blowing up, it doesn't happen super often for old movies. But I follow some music critics on YouTube because I'm not like a super big into music gal, but I like music. I like seeing what's out there. And one of the things they kept noting this last year is that a lot of the songs that were like in the big hits of this year were stuff that was either hanging around from years prior. Pink Pony Club was one of the biggest hits of last year. It was from like 2020. Or Ribs by Lorde was in the top 100. That's from like 2015. Older stuff does blow up on other mediums, and for movies specifically, to use a movie that I'm certain the Oscars haven't happened this year, but it's going to be eligible. We can all just like rip that Band-Aid off. Nobody at Netflix, nobody at Sony who produced the film saw K-pop Demon Hunters of all things being like one of the biggest hits Netflix has ever had, and it just was.
Yeah.
And I still haven't been able to like parse why. I don't get it. I don't get that movie. I'm sorry. I've said that in several formats. I'm gonna keep saying it. I don't get it, but it's fine. I'm 36 years old as of yesterday. I don't need to get it.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, yeah.
I hope you celebrated by watching K-pop Demon Hunters.
Yeah.
No, I celebrated by watching Bottoms, which is the exact opposite of this, in that it's not really set in any specific time or place. And also, it's very explicit. It is very explicitly horny.
Right.
Great movie. We should have won Oscars. So like, I kind of do hope that, like, if nothing else, me covering weird old movies, although I'd have to have people listen to the podcast for that, will get people to, like, I'm certain that you, if, as some budding film nerd listening to this podcast, have a list of movies that you feel like you should have seen but that you haven't seen. Well, go fucking watch them. Nothing to do it but to do it. Go watch The Third Man.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely go watch The Third Man. I was just listening to another podcast where someone who's turning 70 this year had never seen The Third Man. And
Good Lord.
The co-host was like, "Yeah, you should see The Third Man
Before you die.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
That was me doing a little bit of self-advertising previous episode, The Third Man, but also just a great movie.
yeah. Third Man. Yeah. Okay.
It's also another movie that, like, I make a lot of cracks whenever I cover movies from the 50s and the 40s, and honestly more than a little bit the 30s. World War II sort of looms very large over the whole 3-decade period here, and this is, I think, as about as explicit as a movie I've covered has gotten, at least until I cover an actual World War II movie, or like The Happiest Days of Our Lives or whatever.
Best years of our lives.
That's it. Yes, whatever the fucking title is. There's movie. It's a movie.
You'll get to it.
The one with the hooks.
Yeah. Well, let me ask the two of you again. It's hard for me like to set aside 2 hours, and I hate that being a movie person, and saying that. But when I put this on again, when you have to watch a movie that you haven't seen, you watch it for a podcast, you have a conversation. There's a party that makes it feel like homework, right? And it's in your head. But when I started this, I was like, oh. And I'm always reminded, and it's weird saying this, that I actually enjoy movies, right?
Yeah.
When Connie is doing the schedule that she gives, that she gives I can't remember his name. Who does Coburn play with? Dingle, right? The schedule that she gives him, it goes on for so long, and it's so specific, and his reactions to, I was rolling on the floor, not literally, but like it was so funny, and I was like, this is what. I love movies. I love being able to just be whisked away and enjoy dialogue and enjoy characters.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, and again, the hour and 44 minutes, it went by really fast. I was like, I watched it last night, started like 11. I was like, I'll watch half and then I'll turn it off and I'll watch the rest of and no, I watched the whole thing because I was having such a good time. But my question for you two is, and again, this is really what I latched onto, is why can't people just watch these movies where they're just as fun or more fun than movies come out today? Would this be a movie? It's on a 4-star scale. I would give it maybe a 3. It doesn't like reach for the stars, but it does what it needs to do, and everybody's entertaining. You know what I mean, from start to finish. But I think this would make a good movie if somebody's like, I don't really know about old movies. I'm like, okay, well, sit down and watch More the Merrier. This is giving you an idea of how fun movies can be. I'm just wondering if the two of you, if that would be a case for showing this movie to somebody.
It's hard because, like,
I mean, I love this movie, so like, if you're a movie buff, but the wartime racism, I feel like, would stop me from just obviously recommending it to someone.
The extremely casual slur.
That's a discussion, and it's like, it's not something that I have thought through. The week I watched this, I posted about a comic strip with caricatures of black kids. I watched, our TV podcast was about the dad on Three's a Crowd trying to get his daughter's ex-boyfriend to sexually assault her so she'd go back to him. Like, it was a heavy week, and when I saw that, I was just like, man, come on. Like, really? Did we need this? And I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, that is kind of a risk of a lot of older movies. Another previous episode we covered is one of my favorite movies of all time, which is Black Narcissus.
Yeah.
And like, I obviously I love that movie a lot. It's probably one of my favorite, like, I don't know if I can call it a horror movie, but it feels like a horror movie.
Yeah.
But it's also just like a movie from the 50s about India made by white people. So there's just a lot of stuff in there. I'm like, okay, yep, okay. So like, that is sort of the risk of older movies. There's a lot of stuff there that is very, and when I say older in this case, I don't even necessarily mean from the 40s.
Could be the 80s. Yeah, the 90s.
90s. I have people, we people will reference Ace Ventura to me, and I'm just always sitting there going like, "Hey, ask any trans woman how they feel about Ace Ventura."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Role Models is what, 2008, and we watched that at movie night, and half the room's like, "Holy shit, were we homophobic in 2008?" Like, yep.
Yeah.
So like that is always going to be a risk, and that's always going to be a barrier into getting people into older movies, and that's like that sucks on both ends. That sucks for the people who are going to miss out on a lot of good stuff, and that sucks for like the movies and the people who have to endure that shit to watch them. Like that sucks. It just sucks.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like, yeah, it sounds like the three of us are the type of people that would watch and be able to, not, that's not a conversation that we'd really, when we're watching an older movie, we kind of get that they had different, moral codes and things like that. And so, yeah, they're, yeah, you're right about Black Narcissus. It's like, yeah, but, I still love it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You're taking it from the time that it was made. And I think that's an interesting point, Andrew, that you kickstarted here, is that, yeah, you're going to show it to somebody who's got different attitudes about how they watch movies. Like they're hyper aware of problematic issues, where something like the racism, again, it's Black families that suffered the most for the housing, and they don't really cover that, and they make it more of a white problem.
Mhm.
But they don't, they audit, like I wouldn't really, I just delve into the movie as I see it, you know what I mean? And then somebody who's hyper aware, they can be like,
Yeah.
but where are all the Black people? Which is that's a rightful question to ask. It's just,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Does that make sense? I just think we're not quite as hyper aware as modern kids are.
Yeah, and so one of the young people I work with we were talking about something because we have nothing in common except K-pop Demon Hunters, which I watched in exchange for her watching Duck Soup, I believe.
Oh, good trade.
She was like, "I'm never fucking watching Duck Soup."
Oh, okay.
But she was talking about how she doesn't like the Marvel movies anymore because the fandom's just too toxic.
Tracks.
And she thinks about it is engaging with the sort of community around it. And I never did that. I mean, to some degree, I did that as a, teenager, and I will, there was something going on with my initial reaction to the Phantom Menace, but in general, I would never think of the fandom as having anything to do with whether or not I would, watch a movie.
Right.
However, for someone who feels that way, getting into classic movies is a fucking minefield, pardon my like.
No, you're right.
I forgot to ask, do we swear?
I fucking swear all the time.
Thank goodness. Thank you, Ellie. Okay. Yes. Okay. So I feel like that's one of the concerns, but at the same time, I mean, stake in the ground. Like, I think that the content warning in front of, the cutting the French Connection on Disney Plus is fucking fine. If I'm a 10-year-old black kid who gets into my parents' Disney Plus, and, I think that looks cool because of the trailer or some shit, like, I don't need that. Like, I'm not somebody who needs that. Have the uncut version. It's easy. You can do it. Like, so of the context of suggesting this to someone with like a disclaimer of some sort, an acknowledged disclaimer that does not, cause any boycotts of fucking Pluto or whatever. Like, yeah, because actually this is just shitty. This isn't actually as problematic as, there was no... I mean, our next episode of Three's a Crowd involves Asian people, and I'm like, they're doing The Voice. are they doing eye jokes to my co-host, whether or not she leaves that cliffhanger in. But like, so yeah, so like this would be this is easier to recommend than fucking Breakfast at Tiffany's, which is a wild
Or Birth of a Nation
thing to say. Well, yeah, I mean, Birth of a Nation is like, I feel like
Birth of a Nation also just kind of sucks.
I mean, there's that too. Like, I remember when it came out in the late 80s on video, and there was this big push toward, embracing it. And it's like, oh, gee, in hindsight, those people were just fucking racist. Like, that's all it was. We figured that out. So, like, I think this is a far more... Like, there's nothing other than that jumps out. And it's about the kid being stupid to some degree. Mm-hmm. And, like, it is complicated. Like, I don't know. I will say that we are not hearing anti-German slurs.
Yeah.
So, like, I will say that. But it is... You know what? America did a really bad job with... people who weren't white in the 1940s. Just gonna there. I'll stipulate that. There we go.
Shocking.
But they ignore that for the most, and I think that's maybe the issue is they ignore it. They don't really dive. It's just, again, it concentrates on all the white faces. I think the worst that you talk about German slurs, the worst that it gets is when the scout or whatever comes in and he's trying to get like advice, and he does like the Japanese. I'm not even sure the sound that he makes is making fun of Japanese. Like being a half Asian myself, I didn't really take that as, oh, that's offensive, because he makes a weird, says I'm a Japanese spy or something. And he chases after the kid with his binoculars, and the sound that he makes I was like, I've never heard that sound before, so I don't know if I need to be offended by that. You know what I mean? But it's like it's like engaging in something that's really not there. I just don't know if you know what it's they don't concentrate on that. It's more of these characters, and it's maybe someone will look at the movie and go, well, they didn't dive into this, and so maybe it's lacking from that, which I don't know if they needed to.
I don't know if they needed to. I have this like recurring. I don't necessarily want to call it like a bugbear, but like a question that I have to ask about, like, people complain about certain directors, focusing mostly on white people, and like I have seen Wes Anderson direct movies. I saw Isle of Dogs. He should just focus on white people. It's fine. It's fine. I don't need that, Wes.
Or Tim Burton, maybe. I've heard that.
You were talking about exchanges of watching. I watched Wednesday season 1 to get a friend of mine to watch the Tegan and Sarah memoir show High School. Boy, did I lose in that fucking exchange.
That is hilarious, because in preparation I listened to Beetlejuice and
yeah, I did not care for Wednesday. Hot take. But as for like a movie to like get people into older movies, I do think that movies, you usually hear like the big classics. We reference Casablanca or like Citizen Kane, the really famous ones.
Third Man.
But like the movie that I found that got a friend of mine into watching like older movies, and I referenced Ernst Lubitsch earlier, was The Shop Around the Corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, my favorite romantic comedy, by the way.
There we go. So, like, I don't know. I don't know if this would necessarily be my first pick, but it would be something that I could use to say, like, look, I know that we have, there's a thing going around right now that, like, movies nowadays are bad, which I don't believe at all. I saw Marty Supreme. I saw One Battle After Another. Movies,
they're out there, yeah.
There are always good movies. There are always bad movies. But the thing is, by the time we get to the hell year of 2026, we don't really remember the disposable garbage from 1943 anymore. We don't remember that there were movies that didn't shoot for the stars, because if a movie didn't do something big and memorable, broadly, you're not like pushed to go see it. I spent a lot of my time being told I should watch Casablanca, and I watched Casablanca, and it's great, but like, I don't know, what I referenced Hello Frisco Hello, which won Best Original Song at the Oscars this year. Good Lord, how many nominees did they have? Or like, I was never been suggested that I should watch that movie, because people just like forgot it existed, even though it won an Oscar. And so I think it's useful to also go back and watch like the middling or the like pretty good movies. I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd, which I think is It's a solid, like, oh god, I have to use a baseball metaphor, don't I? I'm not good at those. It's like a base hit.
Base hit, yeah.
Okay. Oh, I only watch hockey. Leave me alone.
Oh, I tried watching a hockey TV show last night. There wasn't a lot of hockey.
No, I didn't watch the hockey TV show. I watch women's hockey. Which
Okay.
my running joke about heated rivalry is that it's a cultural appropriation, because men's hockey, half of them won't wear pride jerseys, and women hockey you have to have a chart to tell who's dating who. So it's just wrong. It's wrong. Never mind. Not doing that bit right now. My point is that, like, I think that it's good to remember there were a lot of 3 out of 5-star movies that came out in 1943. There were a lot of, like, 1 out of 5-star movies
Yeah.
that came out in 1943.
Wow, what a good point. Yeah.
And I think that it's good to remember those things too, both because there is always something worth remembering from those eras, and because it'll pull the scales off your eyes that, like, 1943 was the best year for movies ever, because the only movies you know from it are Heaven Can Wait and Casablanca.
Yeah. Ellie, that's a great point, because I think maybe the difference nowadays, and again, this is what I love about conversations like this. I didn't mean when I asked, I don't mean this movie to be like, oh, is this the movie you would show people to get? And you know what I mean? I think it's just a good example. You know what I mean?
But a movie, yeah.
But I love conversations. I didn't mean this to turn into like a 20-minute conversation. You know what I mean? But I love that we're doing this and talking about this. That's what a great conversation will always spark conversation, if you know what I mean, and lead us.
Rule number 1 of this podcast is we're never off topic, because
yeah,
what does off topic even mean with me here?
Exactly. But you're right. It's like how we only talk. We look at, like, these past movies, like the classics, 30s, 40s, and we don't realize that there were some, correct, that weren't as great or were actually flat out bad, right? Because those aren't part of the conversation anymore. We really need to talk about the good stuff. I just think maybe, like, today the only difference is there's nothing really as groundbreaking, I guess, because we've seen everything there are a few, but it's not like looking at the 30s and 40s and all these movies that created new visual language or new way to tell stories.
Right.
I think that's maybe the difference. But that's an excellent point that never gets brought up, is yes, there were great movies, but those are the only movies that we're talking about, really. And we just have more time to pay attention to the bad movies now, because we don't see what's going to last like 20 years from now.
I think I got to get this out of the way because I just learned it, because I just read the Wikipedia. Charles Coburn was a card-carrying white supremacist.
No.
Congratulations,
Yay.
Academy Awards.
Oh,
Yay! No. He also did a movie with Paul Douglas and Linda Darnell that looks delightful called Everybody Does It. But
I say it in the intro, and I'll say it again. Kevin Spacey won multiple Oscars before he was outed as a rapist. They gave Roman Polanski an Oscar in 2002. You're never gonna. I can't skip over every.
No.
Do you know how many Oscars Woody Allen movies have?
You can't bet everybody, right?
Yeah. You just got to roll with it at some point.
Yeah, and so, with that in mind, I'm happy with the black guy who shows up at the end and is just fine in More the Merrier. But
yeah,
with the idea that there's all of this stuff going on in this era where the thing about the late 30s and early 40s for me is that it's when the technology gets, affordable for everyone. And so you're seeing Greg Toland, the guy who shot Kane and Grapes of Wrath, but you're also not seeing, once it goes to color, you're not going to see, color does not have no matter what you do with the color, there's just no way to give it the personality that black and white has.
True.
And I feel...
Unless you're Powell and Pressburger and Jack Cardiff, unless you can really
do it like that. But that is also... And you can see it. There are people who have done very specific color scales. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there are some recent examples of people who were very intentional about their color. But even with, Cardiff, and they were creating a kind of spectacle that we have lost. We sort of gave up in the 70s to some degree, and killed it off through the 80s and 90s, and even the early 2000s with shot on video stuff. But we sort of now have a very flat, there is
Yes,
a range. Like, you can see a badly done, what a cheap Netflix show looks like after having seen enough Netflix shows. You can tell when they're being cheaper than when they're not being cheaper. But everything sort of looks like a Marvel movie. Everything sort of looks like a Disney movie, a Disney family movie. Like, then there are big swings, but there aren't a lot. It's not like we have a whole generation of, 20 and 30 somethings who are figuring out how to shoot something and get the black and white. They're not even trying to figure out how to convert something to black and white and give it any personality, right?
Unless it's what Godzilla -1. This was a recent example of them doing it well.
Yes, and that's like the only example, even though just gonna say it, if you want to take Logan and you want to turn off all the color, it looks exactly the same as the one that supposedly went through recolor timing. It's not shot. You could do it. I'd love it if somebody tried it, but then you have to get into the discussion of what's a proper aspect ratio for 2026. And, just like, I will get off the soapbox in a second, but...
I'm loving this. No, stay on it. It's great.
Okay. So when we think about like the trajectory of American cinema, like it got nuked by 9/11, right? Like 9/11 completely changed what types of movies were made for 12 years. Same thing happens with wars, right? Like that totally, when I'm watching my old 60-minute 30s movies, there's a big shift once the war becomes a real thing that's happening, even in the like context of the film being made. We're seeing the same sort of nuking now, and we have we have AI, and we have Hollywood being chicken shit. We have we have them betraying the audiences they spent the last 10 years cultivating. And it's just sort of this really bad time for creativity right now.
True. Yeah.
Like, it's just a very frustrating thing. And it's like the 40s still had that creativity. They'd have another bump in the late 40s when they started doing more location shooting. And then we'd see it sort of die through the 50s. Like, I love a lot of early 50s stuff, but it starts taking a hit. The late 50s gets rough. And I mean, there's some crap in the 60s. Like,
definitely. Yeah. But you have like counterculture stuff. You have like Godard and like the 60s.
Yeah.
You had to turn away from American cinema to look at other countries and how they were bringing originality back into stuff. And you're right, that kind of the lack of creativity. It's always there. We always see it. It's a roller coaster. It's just if we're looking at everything in hindsight, I guess it's easier to ignore all the bad stuff or the lame stuff. And you're right, like everything looks like a Disney Channel movie, even these giant blockbusters, and so yeah.
It's incredibly frustrating how like even movies with really good, interesting practical effects like Frankenstein or the Wicked movies, I don't know what they're doing to them in post, but they look fake.
They do.
They look fake.
Yeah.
They do.
I hate it.
I know that, again, we had a downturn, you're right, after the 70s got really experimental, and the 80s were like, Tarantino's right, I hate to say that, but like during the 80s, like there wasn't really a lot of adventurous filmmaking because it was all about the spectacle and things like that, making sure that everything was in your face. And then the 90s, I think the independent movies kind of brought a lot of that stuff back. But you look at the 90s movies now compared, like somebody just tweeted a bunch of stuff about The Fugitive.
Yeah.
And you're right. You look at some of the shots, and you're like, that looks like they're actually on a location with an actual crashed train. Look at the colors, look at the depth of everything. And you look at shots today, and they have it doesn't even look like the people are standing in the same set together. It looks like everybody's been joined in post. And even if they aren't, like you look at something like Jurassic World Rebirth, I just think that the whole thing looks so fake. I don't buy anything in it. You know what I mean? And I don't know if that's just because of the way that they don't know how to shoot it, or what, just something's missing. But there are still the movies that do stand out. It's just you're right. It's a weird time right now.
I mean, if we use like this part, like let's say the 2010s as our analogy for the 80s, when the MCU and the DC movies and like the revival of the Jurassic Park franchise, all that stuff really, really got going as our analogy for the
And
80s.
Fast and Furious took off. Yeah.
The Fast and Furious. But the new God, I hate those the new Ghostbusters movies. The newest ones. I'm not going to go into that though. I don't. No one. People get really mad at me for my opinions about those movies.
We have the first one. It's fine. We can just concentrate on the first one. We don't need to talk
like,
about
but like then I think that we sort of are starting to see kind of an analogy to like the underground movement of coming back into art. I tell people a lot, partially because I love just like informing people of its title. One of my favorite movies of the decade right now is one, so low budget that it makes Clerks look like a Marvel movie. Two, 4.5 hours long and a huge bummer. And three, it's entitled Castration Movie Anthology 1, The Fear of Having No One to Hold You at the End of the World.
Okay.
and it's really good, and it's extremely worth watching. It's a huge bummer. Just throwing that out there. So like there is, Jane Schoenbrunn is out there, Rose Glass. There are new artists coming out who are pushing boundaries again. Oh God, what is her name? The Julia Descarnot, the one who did Titane.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That I think that like art, these things are kind of cyclical. Money men always want to like grab film by the throat and like make it into this safe, easy to replicate formula. And the simple fact is that they will, I feel like they're always going to fail, because there's always going to be an element to any kind of art form that it defies the ability for people to make a formula. People will get bored. People are getting bored with the Marvel movies and with the Jurassic Park movies, so they're not bored enough. They're still making those fucking things. And so like I think that this stuff is cyclical and weird and depends. We'll get to the 70s of like, maybe we're actually getting back there. Marty Supreme and One Battle After Another and Sinners were all like, they all made a ton of money last year. Maybe Auteur is back on the menu, boys. Or maybe I'm just like trying to read too much into individual data points that are only really readable in hindsight. Who knows?
Yeah. It's just I like all the points everybody's bringing up here, like Andrew too. It's like we all have. It's so easy to gain access to these movies. Where when I was growing up, it was hard. Like you're right, you'd have to go to Hollywood Video to find one type of movie and Blockbuster to find another. Or me being a Godzilla fan growing up, we had like offshoot video stores where I knew I could get a copy of Godzilla versus Monster Zero because I saw it there one time. You know what I mean? And it's nowadays I can just look up Godzilla versus Monster Zero and just watch it within 5 minutes. I don't have to get out of, but there's just something that's missing about even that experience of going to a Blockbuster and finding it is more interesting to me than being able to just look it up. And that's a weird complaint to have, but it's like, I miss when we could go see movies like this, or like I said, the what's the Momoa Bautista one, whatever that one's called, or the Netflix one that was like Die Hard that was out last year. Carry On, right? Where I would have killed like in the 90s when I saw everything. That would have just been a movie that I would see on any given weekend, and they were like a dime a dozen. And now they're just going straight to streaming, and it gives these kids today it gives them more access or easier access to their phones. Where if they're sitting on their couch, I don't have to pay attention to this next Netflix movie. I can still play on my phone and not have anybody bug me. And there's just a level of engagement that's not there anymore. even for a movie like this, even for a movie like The More the Merrier, that it just gives you an idea of this is what movie stars were. They just had fun with each other and had fun, effervescent, sparkling dialogue. You know what I mean? I just think there's something missing today where we don't. This would be a Hallmark movie today, right?
They did Andrew and I were talking before we started. Apparently, they did a remake.
It's not a remake.
It's not a remake?
No, the Hallmark one is totally different. It's a Christmas movie.
Of course it is.
The remake is actually Walk, Don't Run, which...
Oh, yeah, it took place in, like, the
Tokyo
Olympics.
Yeah.
Tokyo Olympics. I've never seen it, but that one came out 2 years later, after the Olympics, so they must have thought about it, as opposed to this, which presumably came out sort of in the present of the what's going on.
What's interesting about you saying that, they didn't, they're making movies, so you can be on your phone while you're watching it, is like there's been a couple of very interesting reports that like Netflix is intentionally making stuff to do that. They have a rule that every single important piece of information has to be communicated entirely through dialogue, and it has to be reiterated at least once. And then again, like I whatever I think of the movie itself, that is not K-pop Demon Hunters. You do actually have to pay attention to the screen to follow everything, especially since there's chunks of it in Korean. Or I think, I don't remember. But the point I'm making is like that. My point, therefore, is that people are getting really bored with that. People are getting really dissatisfied with that. It makes the movies feel like they're condescending to you, like you can't follow stuff.
Yeah.
Like this movie, I joked with a friend of mine, like the end of the movie involves the main character ish. Is Dingle the main character? Sort of, I guess.
Sort of.
He's the one pushing everything forward. You could make that argument. Yeah.
But he, like, in between scenes, knocks down a chunk of wall in the lady's apartment, and they don't tell you that explicitly. They just sort of let you come to that realization when they start moving between rooms they shouldn't be able to move between.
Yeah.
I don't know, like I don't really like watching movies where even if a movie isn't great, we mentioned Hallmark movies, and I watched a Hallmark movie for a friend's pod called Pride and Prejudice and Mistletoe, and its first crime was that it's not really anything to do with Pride and Prejudice, which, why are you teasing me like that? I love Pride and Prejudice. What are you doing to me? And its second and much bigger crime is it felt like it was condescending to me constantly.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't understand any emotional beat unless they expelled it out, and that makes a movie unpleasant to watch. So I will, no matter what, I will go to bat for this movie, and that it's not condescending to me. It's expecting me to follow it.
Yeah. That's a great point. Like I as I was watching that scene, it gradually occurs to you that, they don't have the partition anymore. And so and so it's kind of a joy where you're like, and so it's you end the movie with a smile on your face, not just because it's charming. Hallmark movies can be charming, but it's also filmmaking wise. It's like, they're keeping that hidden and they're treating you like an intelligent person that you're understanding finally what's happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's, like I said, this is only a 3-star movie, but there's nothing wrong with it being only a 3-star movie. There's a lot of stuff in here that still works. It's magic. Not every movie has to be Citizen Kane. So yeah, that's a good point. It's like, don't treat me like an idiot. Even something as simple as this treats you like you're an intelligent and you're able to grasp things on your own.
So how about that Oscar it won?
Oh yeah, so it won for the racist guy we know about. I'm sure there are many other racist guys that we...
It won for the most racist guy. It was the 50s. They're all kind of racist.
They're all kind of racist, but yeah, he gets a whole section about being racist on his Wikipedia. So
oh boy.
He was one of those dudes where, like, I feel like I should have heard of him before.
Oh, really?
Tell a lie. I've seen The Devil and Miss Jones. Yeah, I feel like I'd heard his name before, but I couldn't place him.
I feel like, and another thing when we talk about the youth being disconnected from the classic movies, when I was a kid, Marilyn Monroe was still a big icon of the classic movies. Like Elvis was still a big icon in the pop culture. And so when you lose those things for whichever reason, it sort of cuts off you know, you're not gonna discover some movie because of Elvis or whatnot. Because Coburn was in a Marilyn Monroe movie, and I feel like that's what I had heard of him from.
I'm looking over his whatchamacallit, his Wikipedia page to see if I've seen any other movies he's in. He was in previous episode, the 1956 Around the World in 80 Days. I didn't remember him in it because there are so many cameos in this movie.
Yeah.
Holy shit, I just remembered.
Well, I guess you could also say what Oscar-wise, there are we have to vet one person, we have to vet everybody, right? I mean, there's going to be huge swaths of people that are horrible. I just recorded a musical episode, and then you look up Gene Kelly treating Debbie Reynolds like crap on the set of Singing in the Rain, or I'm not even going to mention his name, but the guy that was heading up the studio for MGM musicals, he exposed himself to Shirley Temple when she was 10. And so you look up these people and you're like, oh, gross. Like it was rampant, you know what I mean? But I guess here they're just awarding the guy. You know what I mean? I think maybe let's look at it that way.
In a previous episode, we covered the absolute classic film, The Adventures of Robin Hood. It's an incredible film. It's still like the Robin Hood movie that looms over all the others.
True.
Don't ever look up Errol Flynn's personal life if you want to enjoy that movie. Like, never.
I cannot tell you what a joy it was to look up Fred Astaire. I'm like, oh no, and not finding anything problematic about it.
It's a nice feeling, but like, you don't want to know Errol Flynn.
Yeah,
and that's sort of like part of the point I want to. It was Charles Coburn like a vicious white supremacist? Yeah, but like, I don't know. They still gave him the Oscar. It is still part of film history. What are we gonna do? We're gonna pretend that it wasn't part of. I have a real like personal issue with the way, like when a person is outed as an awful person, there's this mental breakdown that people go into where they're like, oh, well, it turns out I never liked his work anyway. And
not true.
I don't think that's a helpful impulse.
Yeah.
I understand why people want to do that, but like,
right? Yeah,
I don't think it's helpful for me to pretend that like Neil Gaiman, for example, didn't write a bunch of stuff that really changed how I write and read fiction. Is that, and yeah, he's a fucking monster, but like, I don't like the corollary. Only good people can make good art.
True. Yeah.
Because it makes you ignore when something you like is made by. It puts your emotions into whether or not someone is a good person. It makes it part of you, and like, it's not part of. I am not a bad person because I liked something made by a monster. It's just like that's just art. That's just how it works. We all like the Beatles when John Lennon beat his wife. That's just life,
right?
And people say that. People on the flip side, people say that to like whenever you bring up the Beatles. I'm like, okay, what's your point?
Why? Yeah, it's not going to change. Same thing with Coburn winning here. I didn't know that he won the Best Supporting Actor in 1943 until we just sat down and watched this movie. I'm like, why are we watching this for?
I didn't even look it up.
Yeah. So that it's not going to be an issue for me as I'm watching it, and it's not like he played a racist. Like, I mean, it's all these things that we're talking about are very subjective. I can't tell you. We were talking. Was it off? About like Promising Young Woman or something like that. I can't tell you how to react to that movie. I can only react how I react, and then let's discuss why our reactions are different. That's all we can do.
For the record, he beat Charles Bickford for The Song of Bernadette. Gerald K. Naish for Sahara. Claude Rains for Casablanca. That's probably the one that people will be like,
oh, now I'm mad.
And Akeem Tamioff for Whom the Bell Tolls. The movie was also nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Writing Screenplay, and it lost all three to Casablanca.
As you would.
So, that's sort of like the other thing you'll note once you've done enough of these episodes and look at there a lot of years. There's just sort of one movie that wins most of the awards, and then like, here's a Best Supporting Actor bone for you. The More the Merrier. Here, watch on the Rhine, have a best actor. It's fine. Oh, best song, Bernadette. Here's your best actress, but we're really focused on Casablanca over here.
And then the split vote, how that plays in. Okay, last time that they gave an Academy Award to somebody, I will stipulate as a piece of shit, Brad Pitt 2020. So it's not like we stopped doing it recently. It's the norm.
We keep doing it.
Yeah.
It's hard when you want to. Are we awarding like the work or the man? You know what I mean? That's hard.
Yeah.
That's tough stuff.
And also, like, as I've indicated again, in the intro of the episode, movie being eligible is not an endorsement from me personally. My least favorite movie of 2016 won an Oscar. My favorite movie of 2016 didn't even get nominated for anything.
Yeah.
That's life.
It's life.
Yeah.
It's just I don't actually know if I would say the Oscars are a positive or negative for us. I just think they're a good way to have a guided tour through a lot of history of film.
It's a good gauge for tastes. Yep.
Such as pretty good romantic comedy from the 40s that I'd never heard of.
Yeah.
There was, I can't remember where I read this, but somebody, maybe it was in a Malton, not the film guide, but George Stevens his big hit would be, his breakthrough was A Place in the Sun, and he was sort of described as more interesting before he made it big, but he did Vivacious Lady, which is Cary Grant and Ginger Rogers. I can't remember what else, but did he do Shane?
Yes, he did, with Gene Arthur.
Okay, yeah, so... Well, I wouldn't agree. Oh, he did Giant. I mean, yeah, Giant's got problems, but it's also...
A giant.
Okay. Did Gunga Din? There's one that would be a fun one to talk about. I'm kidding.
Okay, I'm going to exit the episode before I have to talk about that. Goodbye for everyone. Going off to the Long Island Sound. No, I'm not. It's probably frozen. Guess that would mean I'm walking to Long Island. No, I don't want to walk to Long Island. Final thoughts on the movie. Andrew, go.
I love it. Highly recommend it if you're cool with 40s racism.
Yeah, that's fair.
Or ignoring the racism. Yeah, for me, just a good, solid 3-star movie. A good reminder of why we go to movies in the first place, just to enjoy the actors and the comedy and the dialogue.
Mm-hmm. B+. Yeah, same here. Kind of a B+ movie, which is perfectly cromulent.
But it's also interesting, again, it does the housings. They didn't have to do that, but it's interesting that it's set during this time because it gives us a window into something I don't think we've really seen before in a movie.
And that's something that sorry to interrupt, but that's something I wanted to get us to, but we never did, was...
No, go ahead. We can still... That's what Final Thoughts is for.
The idea of a movie that very specifically talks about something that's going on in the world when the movie is being made and released. So, like, 43's got another good example with Mission to Moscow. Like, for a hot minute, we were in love with Russia, and there was a bestseller about how great communism was, and by the time the movie came out, we were not in love with communism anymore. And so, it's sort of in the, I guess, 80s, became like the TV movie to some degree because it was referring to something that was going on in the world. But I was just trying to think, can you think of any other American movies? And it gets weird with foreign or non-American films because like they had the war to react to and recovery from the war to react to for years. And then, very amusingly, there's a Japanese movie. I cannot remember what it's called, but it's from the guy who made Love Letter. And it's about a bunch of, like, kids living in a dystopian commune. And I was like, oh, it's just something that's going on right now in Tokyo? I don't know. Like, but, like, other movies that are about something that is very topical. Like, studio movies.
It's kind of hard. Like, I think that part of the problem nowadays is that, like, between pre-production and production and post-production and the lead-in time with advertising, it's very hard to make a movie about a specific moment in time without it missing that moment in time. You know, all the movies about COVID have to come out after COVID, you know?
And like we look at it in hindsight. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And honestly, a lot of them are honestly, unfortunately, a lot of movies that try to be about a specific moment in very recent time tend to end up a little embarrassing these days. I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I don't like movies set like broadly now. It's that like movies that try to be about an issue that's specific without being about a specific event.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. They end up feeling kind of phony to me.
I'm just thinking of well, one battle after another is kind of a statement on stuff going at now without actually it making it
Mhm.
about that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, one battle after another is not is very loose about its timeline.
Yeah, and it's just a lot of people seeing themselves or stuff that's going on. But I look at like a lot of times maybe it's better to make it after, like in hindsight, because I think like the Dark Knight trilogy really covers a lot of 9/11 issues with terrorism, and the Dark Knight specifically when Bruce Wayne uses all the cell phones
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
able to find, and it's the Patriot Act, right? Or Minority Report is all about that, how our privacy is being usurped by government, that kind of stuff. I just think that like that's an interesting, I'll have to think a lot more about that, Andrew, because as all I'm thinking of now is movies that don't really tackle it specifically, but tackle it in a roundabout way where you can look at it and go, oh, I see what you're doing here, right? You have Steven Spielberg doing like all the spiders walking around the housing and seeing like the from the ceiling point of view, and everybody like being interrupted by this stuff and not even caring. You know what I mean? It's just because they've gotten used to it. So I don't I specifically, that, like I said, that's interesting. I don't know if there's any off the top of my head that I can think of that delve into something so specific to their time and actually talk about it.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of I think that like a lot of movies that do manage to talk about events like that do it in a way that is like with Spielberg, like with Minority Report, that are metaphorical. You know, the movies that are the handful of movies that we've gotten that are about 9/11, the event,
Mm-hmm.
are pretty. I can't think of one that I think is good. You know, we've got what like the World Trade Center, extremely loud and incredibly close. What's
I'll
that one?
I'll stick up for United 93. That was a harrowing.
I haven't seen United 93. I've heard people say it's good. I've also heard people say it's really bad. I'm curious. I haven't seen it yet, so I don't want to.
Don't forget the what's his name, Pattinson one.
Well, is that a 9/11 movie? That's
for the last 30 seconds.
Question as to its nature. That is not disproving my point, by the way.
Well, oddly enough, I just found a piece of trivia. The shooting dates for this, they actually started shooting on September 11th, 1942.
I'm looking at that. Yeah. But I mean, think about it. They shot it in 2 months or 3 months and did pickups, and then it was out the door.
Yeah.
But movies that are like metaphorically or like analogous to, you know, the war on terror, the emotions going through America. You know, Dan Olson just did a very good video on the movie Jarhead, which is literally about the 90s Iraq war, but is using that to comment on the 2000s Iraq war. And it's a good movie. It's because it's not nailed down to try to reacting to something that's happening in real time.
Exactly. Invasion of the Body Snatchers 56 is about communism, right? But it's about really pod people, right? They never come out and say it's about communism. But
Exactly.
if during that time when you watch the movie, you're very acutely aware of what the movie's doing or how it's doing it.
You know, one of my I mentioned Frankenstein, and I liked Frankenstein a lot. So don't at me, people on Blue Sky. I mean, you can at me on Twitter if you want, but I'm not on Twitter anymore. But one of the things that kind of struck me about that is a movie, that is a book, obviously from the 1800s, so it obviously can't be about this time. But Guillermo del Toro took the bones of that book and like feeding it through modern anxieties, and he kind of turned Victor Frankenstein into like a tech bro.
Yeah.
And so I think that's honestly going to be kind of a way that makes it work better to react to this moment in time, because then you're not nailed down to trying to react to events as they're happening, especially in our modern like the 2026 hell, because stuff happens so fucking fast nowadays. Remember, like we joked before we started. January has been 6 months in both directions. So much shit happened in it. So I think it's honestly kind of interesting to go back to a movie that could be about such a specific moment in time as it was happening.
Yeah.
I guess because productions were shorter back then. Maybe it's just because the housing crisis went on for like 4 years.
Yeah, if it goes on for long enough. What was one that Bonfire of the Vanities is about the only one that I can think of off the top of my head, and that's not really the same thing, but just the vibe of the yuppie 80s vibe had burned out in the amount of time that it took them to get that movie made.
Mm-hmm. Whereas then you go to like American Psycho, which came out after that.
Yeah.
But can like react to that era better.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, Less Than Zero would have been, I mean.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
There you go.
Yeah, kids, you know who Robert Downey Jr. is? Check out Less Than Zero.
Yeah. Andrew McCarthy. Yeah.
So after failing to refute that suggestion, Darren, do you have anything you'd like to plug?
Yeah, just go visit NostalgiaCast. We're recovering a lot of 90s bucket list movies that we've always wanted to talk about, and so we're just having a good time. We just barely recorded an episode on Mr. Holland's Opus, which let us talk about Richard Dreyfuss and him aging 30 years. They didn't have to use digital de-aging. They just use makeup and body language to sell it,
Oh, wow.
So it's fascinating talking about movies in that context. Or I also have a podcast, Back to Bluey, where my friend Rob and I, we try to refocus on all the shit going on out there and leave that behind so we can concentrate on good-natured family values and parenting through the purview of a Australian cartoon about anthropomorphic dogs. So yeah, check out either one of those podcasts. We have some really fun conversations, and Ellie and Andrum, I'm looking forward to maybe getting you as guests on NostalgiaCast here in the future.
Okay.
Absolutely. I'm always available to be dragged on other people's podcasts. Andrew, what would you like to plug?
We have, let's see, I've got the Onesies podcast available wherever they are. That's one season television shows. We are currently doing Three's a Crowd, which has been interesting and nightmarish, so that's a lot of fun. But
have you done Journeyman yet?
Journeyman?
Yeah, it was an NBC show. It's kind of like Quantum Leap in a way. Maybe you'll get to it, but it lasted a season, and I really liked it. I was just wondering.
I've never even heard of it. No, usually we are not doing good shows. Oh, Kevin McKidd. See, that's problematic. Kevin McKidd, he can act. And then also on hiatus currently, but we do have a very, very lengthy history. 709 Meridian audio commentaries, and that is best done on probably YouTube because of the watch along factor. So those are my plugs.
Alrighty. As always, you can find me, Ellie, on Tumblr at Football in Tuxedos with dashes between the words. You can find me on Blue Sky, Medium, and Letterboxd at LSR42. And you can find this podcast on Blue Sky at Biggest Night Pod. We are available on both Spotify and YouTube, and if you follow us on YouTube, be sure to give us a subscribe, maybe like and comment on the videos so that you can tell me which parts you like and which parts you don't. And thanks to both Andrew and Darren for coming out. I'm glad we had a very interesting conversation. But it's still pretty rough out there right now, so I think I want to stick with romantic comedies for right now. So for our next episode, we are moving all the way back up to the 1980s to talk about Arthur.
Oh, hell yeah.
Dudley Moore used to be a star, yeah.
Dudley Moore was a star. Enjoy.
Hope to see you there.